Hello, this is Mary Shields with Pathways to Healing and Wisdom. Today, I want to talk with you about what an attunement is and how I use attunements in my healing work, both with individuals and with groups, and why I attune people to astrological events. Why are astrological events so important? And even more than that, why is it so important to be doing that now? So, in order to talk about what an attunement is and how it works, I need first to talk a little bit about astronomy and astrology. So, without further ado, let's just dive in. And I want first of all to talk about astronomy. So, astronomy or stargazing has been done since the beginning of time. Every culture and every place has noticed that there were patterns in the sky or pictures in the stars. So some observed, for example, that the moon has a 19-year-old cycle. Not only that, but the stars had cycles of their own and they had movements too. And over time, the ancients discovered that they could even map those movements. So what we in Western cultures call Venus, for example, sometimes appeared as the morning star and then all of a sudden disappeared for a few days and then reappeared as the evening star. And then the reverse happened. Since the ancients didn't understand that the world was round, they wouldn't have known how that happened scientifically, but they would have noticed the patterns and they created stories to explain them. So the ancients of every tradition and culture will have associated the patterns they saw with archetypes and with ways of being in the world. So more than that, they saw these patterns as reflections of our own human experience. So every culture has its own astrology, its own names for the stars, and its own stories about the stars. And they're very reflective of that culture and that culture's understanding of its connection with the divine. Because, of course, the ancients associated these movements of the stars with the gods. So, for example, in the Western European names that we have for our planets and constellations, as well as the patterns they represent, come out of Greek and Roman mythology. So to come back to our example of Venus, the Venus archetype represents love, beauty, harmony, wealth, desire, and those kinds of things. She also carries the shadow side of the archetype, intrigues, jealousy, gossip, envy. So when you work with Venus, you're looking at how all of these aspects of being human are playing out in your life. And when you look at the connection between Venus and another planet, you're looking at how their respective archetypes or characters intersect in your life. Not only that, but the ancients also noticed that that certain patterns in the skies also reflected certain events here on Earth, and their word or the way they described these movements of the planets was "as above, so below." You may have heard that, "as above, so below." Now, I want to talk about that a little bit because it didn't mean that the ancients really thought that the events were already determined. Rather, they noticed that if you understood the patterns in the sky, those patterns could give you clues to how to interpret current events. In other words, they didn't make every daily choice by what they thought the stars were saying, not like a daily horoscope. But instead, they looked for broader themes and they looked for larger patterns. Since ancient times, students of the stars have identified the patterns. They've looked at what tends to happen historically when the pattern comes up in the sky, and they have noticed what archetypes are highlighted when that pattern appears. And they've also noticed that those patterns provide both challenges and opportunities every time it appears. So again, coming back to Venus, if Venus is really active in the sky, particularly in relationship to another planet, all of the different archetypes of Venus are going to be present. You may have love, beauty, desire, harmony, those kinds of things, and also the possibility for intrigues, gossip, envy, jealousy, those kinds of things as well. So each time a pattern appears, there's kind of a higher octave and a more shadow or lower octave. And we as humans have choice as to which of those we connect with. And particularly if we have knowledge, if we have an awareness of what's going on, it helps us to be able to make those choices. So that brings me to attunements. So what's really going on in attunement when I attune people to those energies? The word attunement means to bring into harmony. So it helps you to be in tune with those energies that are strongly affecting you. And I also use the word alignment as well. So alignment means the proper positioning or state of adjustment of parts in relationship to one another. So when you are attuned or aligned to the energies, that puts you in sync with them and gives you the greater ability to incorporate the gifts they bring and to use the energies more effectively. So when I attune you or align you to an astrological event or to a planetary connection, that means that you actually have nature's support for these shifts. And more importantly, and specifically, the attunement will connect you with the opportunities for growth that that particular planetary event is bringing. So an attunement or attuning to the planets or attuning to these events is a healing gift that came in for me a few decades ago. And I want to be really clear that it is spirit that is doing that. It's not me. So when I'm doing an alignment or attuning you to a particular astrological happening, my understanding is that it helps you to use those larger patterns in the most healthy and best way in your life. And that brings me to why. I want to talk before I move into that. Even more than that, since these patterns also have a collective influence, when a group comes together to hold space, not just for themselves individually, but for the planet as well, doing an attunement can help communities, nations, and all of us as humans to make use of these larger patterns for the best and most healthy way forward for us all. You may have heard of Lynn McTaggart, who has written about the power of 8, or you may have heard of the 100th Monkey Principle. The 100th Monkey Principle says that if 100 people are connected with something, that it creates a new energy for something. In quantum physics, it's called a morphogenic field. In what Lynn McTaggart's work has shown more recently is that it's only 8 people that need to come together to make a dramatic effect on the world. And so I do attune people to events and so on in my private practice, but it's even more, far more effective and far more powerful to join together in a group. And I always do that in the context of a healing session as well. So we are working with how those specific events might affect you personally or the group as a whole. And then we also do some healing for the planet as well. I have to admit that I never thought that I would be working with astrology or doing attunements in my own life. This has been something that has really been from very strong internal guidance, and I've been doing this for about 3 years. And so I want to talk a little bit about the why. Why am I taking the time to attune people to events and doing this in groups? And the why is really an interesting question, because we are in the shift of the ages. We are in the middle of probably the greatest evolution or evolutionary shift that humanity has ever experienced. It's a time of great change. It's a time of social change, of political change, of spiritual change, and it's happening the world over. And it's a time that has been prophesied by so many ancient cultures and traditions. So it isn't just, coming out of the blue. We also are in the middle of a huge shift, planetary shift, into what's been called the Age of Aquarius. And you may know that song. This is the dawning of the Age of Aquarius. I love that song. And that was back in the 1960s. And what we've been seeing, especially in the last 3 years, is all the last major planets are moving into Aquarius. And this is bringing up into a new age of more collaboration, of social connection, of community, of unity consciousness. And this is part of that greater evolutionary shift that we are a part of. And so the call in these past few years to do these attunements has been also the call to help people align with these energies, to make the best use of them in their lives, to come into greater awakening, and to make that shift with the greatest ease that is possible. So with that in mind, I'm going to be doing another series of attunements this year, and I'm really excited about this very first one coming up on the 29th of January. I will put the link in the remarks below so that you can actually connect, learn a little bit more about it, and if this calls to you, I hope that you will join me. And I also am doing a whole attunement package for the second year in a row that allows people to come together for these healing sessions and group sessions that that will work in each of you individually, work in us as a group, and help the collective to actually deal with these huge shifts that are happening for us all. And so that package would connect you with being able to be attuned to every single one of the major events that is happening this year. So I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope that you will join me for an attunement. Take care. Bye-bye.